Welcome to Wachacha's Tabletop World. My name is Sweetness Wachacha, and today we're going to be looking at my 10 favorite villains in Marvel Champions. So just for fun here, I thought I'd do my top 10 favorite Marvel Champions villains. I've been playing this game a lot lately. I played it a lot in general. I've really been enjoying it, and I thought I would do my 10 favorite villains. This isn't necessarily villains that I play all the time, although I do play a lot of these quite a lot. I think there's a value in a villain doing his job only a few times and being like, man, that was super fun, or villains you keep going back and playing again. But these are just my 10 favorite, just across all reasoning. So let's get to it. My number 10 is Ultron. He is the ultimate baddie. I love that he's like the third in the box, the core box. It's always fun to have that like really challenging scenario. And he was very, very difficult in the beginning. I love the fact that thematically, like he starts with as the Red Hood. That's a good little comic callback. And then he's like kind of revealed, haha, it's me, Ultron. And then you're fighting him and he's just bringing all the drones out, which is super, super fun. It does hamper your deck because you're like, I needed that card that I just killed as a drone. But also, like, I love that final little bit where it's like nothing's going to stop the clock. You cannot remove threat from that last thing. He's in there. He's going to launch all the nukes. I think that's so cool and so thematic. And it feels exhilarating. It feels like, oh my God, I got to kill him really fast and can't let him scheme out because you could never get rid of that threat. And it feels super fun. The other thing about this that I really love is as the two best kind of fights, right? You're watching those kind of kung fu movies and things, which I love. You know, it's like one hero and he's just bow, 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 bow. He's just mowing through all the bad guys. Well, the other great thing is like, hey, I'm fighting like the big bad guy and it's this big epic, like awesome, like give and take battle. Oh, they're so matched. And that's it. You get both things in this. You get to really feel like a superhero and smash your way through all the drones and just kill them left and right. But then you go and you fight the major bad guy who's also quite difficult. So you have both those very satisfying, exciting fights. You know, and like if you like She-Hulk or something, it's so awesome to like flip up and just smash and just kill like 10 of the Ultron's drones. You really feel like a superhero. Super thematic, super fun to play, and that's Ultron. My number 9 is Mysterio, and I'm going to keep saying this, but this is a huge thematic win. I love Mysterio as goofy as he looks. Recently, I was painting some Marvel Crisis Protocol things, and I'm like, man, you don't stop and really think, about some of these villains, how they look. Like Rhino. He looks so silly, but you don't think about it because you've been reading comic books and watching stuff in it for 30 years, and you don't stop and think like how goofy this guy looks. So Mysterio might look goofy to some. I think he looks awesome. I've always really loved his whole appearance, but I love his whole vibe. I love his illusions and things. I love movies, and that's kind of like really cool. And I think that they really captured it in here. By putting these cards in your deck and stuff, putting all these illusions in, it's like forcing you to be like, what's real, what's not real? You know, the deck kind of you can think of as like your little brain, where you're like, hey, in Magic the Gathering, it's sort of like that's your spell book, and I always really like that mechanism, the thematic mechanism in that game. But in this, it's kind of like you're like, what's real and what's not? I can't tell. Like are these my hands? Are they snakes? What's going on here? And I think that was so thematically well done. I think it's super fun, and it's in a great box as well. So that's my number 9, Mysterio. My number 8 is the Hood. Now, this is a really fascinating villain because he came with a ton of modular sets. So I'm a little bit biased because of the modular sets he comes with. They're all so fascinating, and at the time that it came out, it was such a breath of fresh air for me. I think those minion sets in that game are the best minion sets that are in the whole game, I think, just about. There's so many fascinating, abilities and things, and I think there's just so many of them that can kind of come out, and I love that aspect of it because like most of the time a minion comes out, you kill them and you're done with them. But these minions, because there's enough of them kind of coming out, I think they get more of a chance to activate and they do just more interesting things. I really love that aspect. And then I love thematically that he's bringing all of, in the comics, he's like, he gets all of the little groups and the little organized crime people and he brings all of them together and it's like, you're all under me now, we're one group. And I think that's so cool the way he's doing that thematically by bringing all these different encounter sets together. And then it allows you to play with encounter sets you might not normally play with, or you can kind of chalk these ones that he comes with, which I like the best, to kind of combo those up together because I really love those, that sort of, a lot of Daredevil villains in there and things like, and I love Daredevil comics and stuff, and I love seeing those those guys brought to life. So very, very fun. The Hood is my number 8. My number 7 is Zola. Now, Zola is super, super cool and super thematic. Now, I love the idea of like these villains who are, they have all the big test tubes and things, and they're creating all these monstrous beings in there. And Zola is like that. He's very much like Mr. Sinister. I did enjoy Mr. Sinister, but this so much feels like he's creating these constructs and monstrous like life forms, and then he's like changing them, adding these attachments and things onto them, and they get more powerful when they're doing that. I absolutely love that. From a mechanism standpoint, it works really, really well, or from a thematic standpoint, but also as a mechanism standpoint, I love the idea that these guys come out and they're always going to be like, they're just every 3 rounds you're going to get one. And is it 3 or 4 rounds you get one, and it's super cool because like you'll be like, I'm going to flip down. Oh wait, but if I get a really good schemer coming out on this one, so there's a lot of sequencing. There's a lot to think about it, but also it's a constant pressure. And a lot of times in this game, like you get to some point where it's like arm wrestling. Your leverage gets to be enough, and you're going to win. But Zola is like, he is fighting you till the end. He's bringing stuff out until the end. I really love that. I think it's a constant amount of pressure, a lot of interesting decision points, and super thematic. That's my number 7, Zola. My number 6 is Red Skull. Now, I recently talked to my other list, my companion list to this, about the idea. I love the side scheme mechanism, super, super fun. And I love that he has this side scheme deck with him. He's one of the easier villains, I think. I would say he's the easiest 5 villains for me. I know a lot of people seem to have a challenge with him. It's interesting to see what kind of decks people play, what kind of things they're good at and not good at in the game. I always find him to be quite easy, but I still think he's super fun. Number 1, I love the thematic nature of him. He's in the White House. He's got his side schemes coming out where it's like, he can't be touched because he's in the White House. He can't hurt me. He can't fight me because, that's going to look bad for you superheroes coming to the White House and beating up on the president. And then the whole spreading lies thing, the propaganda, all these little side schemes, super, super cool. I also like in these games, and they don't really use it very often, I always mention Lord of the Rings, the card game as well. There was a card in one of the original, like very difficult scenarios that was beneficial to you. And you're like, what? That's so fascinating. And you can't really do that because you need the enemy deck to keep up the pressure against you. But every now and again, it's really cool to have that. And I think it's super fun that there is like that when you beat these side schemes, there's some benefit. And because it's such a rare thing in this game, it's super fun to say like, oh, if I beat this, I can bring out my ally and do this and that and this and the other thing. Also, there's a ton of really great cards that synergize with removing threat and thwarting. That's half of the game, right? That's what makes the game so interesting, is having both these things. But a lot of games will spit out enemies or the villain will attack multiple times. And you're like, is this Justice player? And you're like, I got all this thwart available, but nothing to do with it. And I love that there's always these side schemes, especially since there's so many cards that play off the side schemes so well. And then you make sure you have targets for those all the time. And I think that's very, very, very fun. So that's my number 6, Red Skull. My number 5 is the Sinister Six. Oh, so close. Should have been the number 6. I love these multi-villain scenarios. I think they're super fun. They have such a huge replayability to them. But this one I really, really love because you get multiple villains out at a time. Some of the multi-villain scenarios, like one will be activated and then another one, or you can only hit one or the other. Or, like with the Morlocks, you're playing one and then maybe you'll play the next one and you won't see the others. But this one, they're all coming in and out. And I love the idea because it really feels super thematic to the old Spider-Man comics and stuff where like, he's duking it out left and right with a bunch of them. He gets, maybe he gets away and then somebody else, Vulture swoops in. I didn't expect you to come in. So I really like that. They really feel like they're playing, fighting together. And when you eliminate one, there's a really great, cool thing where like, should I, I want to knock this guy out because then I'll get to remove threat over here. And that's the other cool thing, speaking of removing the threat, is that you're not trying to like just eliminate the villain. You're kind of like doing what the villain does. It flips it on its head a little bit. You're just trying to almost like thwart your way out of here, which is a really cool thing. You're just surviving. Like Spider-Man always is like the underdog. He's always the underdog. That's the cool part about Spider-Man. He's always like sewing his costume. He's like, I got to hold my costume. Oh man, he smells it. It smells bad. I meant to wash this thing, but I got to do my rent. He's always behind. He's always, we can identify with him because he's always the underdog. And it's so cool because this scenario really feels like it. You're just like duking it out and you're just always trying to make the end, like you can't knock everybody out and have them stay dead. You have to just get through it. And I really love that, like Doc Ock's, his like little decoys and things. You're like, oh, that was just a decoy, so I can't remove threat. Super, super fun. And this can really get pretty nasty. There's some combos in this one that really, that you're like, oh, I'm in danger. You're like Ralph Wiggum. I'm in danger. Super fun and very fresh. The puzzle keeps changing because you have those villains, and whatever combo you've got will make it seem very different each time. So I really love that. I love the variety of it. And that's my number 5, the Sinister Six. My number 4 is the Mansion Attack with the Brotherhood of Evil, the Brotherhood of Mutants. It used to be the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, now it's just the Brotherhood of Mutants. So this is another multi-villain scenario. I really love these, and this one is very similar. You get that variety there, and you are facing just one at a time, but it isn't like that because there's so many cards that either activate, activate Toad or Avalanche or whatever, or if they're not in play, bring them and, go get them out of the deck and bring them in. And I think that's so cool because they're all popping in and out, and you're facing the minion versions of them, you're facing, multiple activations. So it's not just the one villain. It's like you keep switching them out and around, and each of them taxes you in a different way. Each of them has, something they're good at, something they're weak at, whatever. And that's super fun. And the whole thing, it's just this, revolving puzzle that's always changing and asking different questions of you. And I really love that. Super fun, super playable, and super thematic. That's my number 4, Mansion Attack. My number 3 is Apocalypse. This is Apocalypse the Encerabnur. He is so great. I love him. He's one of my favorite all-time villains, and I love the idea, because he's like either huge, X Factor 68, there's this huge version of him. I really love that. But then other times he's he's just smaller but tougher. I really love him as a villain. I think they really captured his ability to change and morph and stuff. And thematically, that's awesome. But I also love the fact that the timing for you changes the puzzle and makes it very interesting, because you're like, if I knock this out, he's going to switch to Biomorph. I don't want him in Biomorph. Can I deal with this being on the table just a little longer? Because I don't want him. He is in Biomorph. I don't want him to attack against me because he's got the overkill right now. Or okay, well. Because there's these side schemes that activate him, right? And you're like, okay, if I get rid of this side scheme, he's going to switch into the large form, and that's going to give him Stalwart, and he's going to lose the Confused I placed on him. So there's all these really interesting sequencing things about him, but he's challenging. He's super fun. I actually really like the kit that he comes with, the modular that you can play with him, because it's like the Ancients and Ozymandias and Ozymandias is, I can't remember the guy's name now, but he's like the older guy from Egypt and stuff. And I love that those things are kind of adding onto this ancient ritual. I love that idea, like him being in his tomb. A lot of the comics deal with we got to get to Apocalypse before he's Apocalypse, because once he's awake and not sleepy by in his little coffin, we got problems. It's sort of like Dracula. You want to fight Dracula in the daytime, you don't really want to fight him in the nighttime. And so there's a lot of interesting sequencing there and stuff. Super fun, but not punishingly difficult. He's not like the Kree Ronin. I forgot his name for a second. He's not like Ronin. He's not like Magneto, where they're just Venom Goblin, which are unbelievably difficult. Fun, but very difficult. It's fun because he's a great challenge, but not totally abusive. That's my number 3, Encerabnur. My number 2 is Hela. She is thematically amazing. I love the idea that you cannot kill her. She can't be killed. But it is an interesting time. When do you knock her out? Because if she gets all her little tools and toys, she's got her sword, she's got piercing, maybe got a lot of tough heroes, maybe it's time to knock her out. And I love the fact that she also gets stronger and stronger the further into her realm that you venture. It's like, when do you knock her out to flip her so she doesn't get all those bonuses? Really fascinating sort of sequencing there. But the best part is the fact that it feels like you're venturing into her lair. You get into the land of the dead, you fight a mini boss, you fight that little side scheme, but you got to be careful, because when you clear those, you're going to get a whole new set. So you got to be ready, you got to be prepared, and it's a lot of puzzling and sequencing and getting ready for those challenges, and I really think that's fascinating. But it feels like you're getting further and further into her realm, and it's getting more and more dangerous. She's getting more dangerous, she's getting stronger, you're fighting her in her realm, and she's got all these big boss minions that you have to deal with on your way to face her. I'm not alone in this. I think this might be the community's favorite scenario of all time. I think it's super fun. There's these predictable sort of decision points, but that kind of makes it fun to plan for around all the other unpredictable elements normally in Marvel Champions. And then at the end, when you get to her, you're ready to face her, and you get to free Odin, and Odin is such a powerful ally, and he's such a cool character, and he's on your side, especially in campaign when you flip him into when he's no longer then he's Battle Odin. He's it's really super fun and satisfying. So thematically a win, and the mechanisms are really fascinating as well. That's my number 2, Hela. And my number 1 is Apocalypse 1. Now, this is the Apocalypse that everybody kind of thinks is a sort of thematic sequel to Hela. You are doing the same thing. You're venturing into his land in this alternate timeline of the Age of Apocalypse. Super fun thing. And you get to fight his prelates in the same kind of style. It's fascinating that him as a villain, he gets stronger and stronger. When he would quest out, he just goes into a bigger form. And occasionally, I try not to let him change, but sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna have to let him go, But he gets a little stronger, and then you're gonna have a greater challenge going forward. But that's kind of an awesome thing because his whole thing is like survival of the fittest. He's getting fitter and fitter and fitter, and I love that too. The idea of like you can't really knock him out, as a villain. Normally, you have to get through his like land and into his his complex and his villainous base or whatever. But I love that when you knock him out, you got to think about it. You're like, he's built up a lot of his attachments, or hey, I don't have the ability to thwart right now, but I can attack and I got a lot of threat on this game. If you knock him out, you can remove some of that threat. That's such a fascinating option. I love having a lot of options. I love having a lot at my disposal with my hero as well as with the villain. And it's like, well, if I knock him out, I can remove some of this. It just makes an interesting puzzle. It makes a lot more choices, a lot more decisions, a lot more things to weigh. And then, as I said, with Hela, those predictable decision points. Do I knock this side scheme out because then I'm going to get my next prelate and I got to deal with them. So if I can't deal with them, I gotta be, maybe I shouldn't pass through that. But then there's one that has 3 acceleration tokens, puts that pressure on pretty big time. Very, very fun. And again, it has those predictable boss moments. It really feels like a movie or a video game, where you're like fighting all the mini bosses and then you get to the big boss to fight them. It's a longer scenario, but it is so satisfying and I absolutely love it. That's Apocalypse. Apocalypse 1 is my number 1. Okay, so there you have it. There's my top 10 Marvel Champions villains at the moment. Jubilee comes out tomorrow, so we'll see what the next box set is, or if we hopefully get a scenario pack or something in there. That'll change this list. Maybe not. We'll see. But those are my 10. Comment below if you disagree, agree, or you tried one of the villains I've talked about because I sounded so enthusiastic about them. Just comment below. But for now, I gotta roll.